Hey, what's up? My name is Brandon Shuey, and this is a video for Project 1, Finance 5563. And I did a valuation on Slack Technologies. Slack Technologies is a communication tech company that utilizes a proprietary network. Their motive is help people be more productive. And they do so through a new way of looking at email, and that is essentially channels. So instead of your email chains coming from your boss and the project lead and the accountant, everybody who's on a project gets email chains sent together. So this email chain is for Project 1, Project 2, Project 3. Slack was built in 2009 as an internal tool for the founder's company. And in 2017, it was marketed towards the public. It went public in 2019. So this has been a difficult stock to evaluate because a lot of its financial information is just not there. Slack has never turned a profit. They've consistently been in the red. They've acquired two small tech companies, one 2 years ago and one this year. The first one they dismantled and took their intellectual property, and the second one is nothing to do with their current platform. It's a corporate directory platform. Slack has currently $14.64 billion in market cap, with the current share price of $25.66 and 570 million shares outstanding. Over the last year, their valuation has moved up and moved down, but on average, it's about the same. It's only grown about 5% over the last year. Some of the comparable firms that we can use to evaluate Slack include firms like Zoom, Box, and Twilio. Each of these firms have a differentiating factor or a niche market that I'd say that they attack, and so does Slack. So that was one reason that this valuation was difficult, was because each of these markets, they don't compete head to head like you would say Coke or Pepsi compete. They're niche markets. So as the tech industry grows and the telecommunications industry grows, we're going to see these companies grow as well. And the market share that they have it's not really head to head. I will say that Slack's best comparable firm, Twilio, they do have a function that competes head to head with Slack. They have an API, which is Application Programming Interface, and this is something that's really targeted towards developers or computer programmers. And both Twilio and Slack have an API that they use for very similar functions. So out of the comparable firms, Twilio is probably the biggest head-to-head competitor. Some of the weaknesses with a valuation like this is you can't use earnings per share because they're negative. So I used enterprise value over revenue. And with those multiples, we found an average implied share price of around $40, which is significantly higher. It's almost double what they're at right now. The best implied earnings per share comes from the multiple with Twilio, but that's still $32, and I don't really trust that number. So like I said, this has been a really tough one to evaluate, just because the comparables aren't that great, and Slack hasn't turned a profit. I will say that sensitivity wise, if you take the average of all of the comparables, Zoom blasts the average implied price out of the market. Their multiple is around 80. Slack's multiple is around 20. And including Zoom, the implied price per share is around $49. But once you take Zoom out, it drops that price down to 18. I do think that if we were to combine Twilio and Box's, I didn't talk much about Box because their multiple was tiny. It was around 3, and their implied price per share was around $18, which is super low. And Box is more of a niche competitor than Slack. They just take up a totally different market share, and even though they are a telecommunications firm, they attack or they go for different consumers. So yeah, this has been a tough one to analyze, especially with the comparables. They're just so different, and I think the best way to get a good analysis is to weight the comparables. So you say Twilio is maybe 2/3 similar to Slack, and Box is 1/3 similar to Slack. I think that would be a really good approach when we're looking at this. We didn't talk about weighting variables, but it's something I do in my professional life a lot. Is I weight variables, and I think that this would be a really great opportunity to do so. And that's because if you find a firm that they compete head to head in this market, but not this much, and this market is the same, or it takes up this percentage of a firm, then we could use a weighted average and figure that one out. I think that's a little more advanced than what we're going for right now, but if I were to analyze the stock as professional, that's what I would do.